I feel that God is wanting to move here, and usually this time of the year is a moment of reflection. We get into December and we get busy with the holidays, and we start getting ready for Christmas and all these things. And at some point, when we get into November, December, and into January, you see, when the clock turns midnight on the 31st, we go into a brand new year. It's a fresh start for us. It's a fresh start for many of us. But at some point during this month, I challenge you to reflect on what has been even this year or the last 2 years that have been so different. You see, all of us this morning sit here and we've been through stuff. We have been through things. I see a lot of joy in people. Things have been great for some. I see a lot of pain also. I sense a lot of pain in a lot of people. We look back at our lives. I just turned 42 years old in November, and the morning of November 12th, I woke up, and for about 10-15 minutes, I just sat and reflected on the last 42 years of my life. I reflected on the last 5 years of my life. I reflected that I woke up in Arizona, and I'm wondering, how did I get here? And see, for some of you, I know there have been moments of reflection when you wake up or you look at your life, your kids, your family, and you wonder and say, man, my life has been great. It's been difficult. It's been hard. There have been challenges. I didn't expect to be where I'm at when I was much younger. I thought I'd be here or I have this accomplished. And a lot of us sometimes wake up and we feel disappointed in what has happened in our life. In other cases, some of us have woken up and said, man, if it weren't for the Lord, I'd be dead. Like, I don't know where I'd be. And I think all of us are in that situation where regardless of what you've been through, regardless of what has happened to you, and see, I want to speak to this. I'm used to saying tonight because we have church at night over there. But I want to speak to you this morning on if you never. You see, because this morning as we sit here, we think about all the things that have happened to us. Right? We are a result of the decisions that we made 5 years ago. Even a few months ago, if some of you in the summertime made a decision to invest in the GameStop before Robinhood stopped you and you cashed out, you made some money. If some of you are into the crypto and all those stuff and you're making some money, right? For those for those that have just done nothing, well, there's nothing there. In other words, there's a cause and there's a reaction to our life. And as we sit here today, I want to talk to those that are wondering, when is it going to be my turn? When is it going to be me? When am I ever going to get out of this situation? When am I going to get out of this problem? When am I going to see the victory in my life? Some of us don't sign up for the things that have happened to us. A lot of things that have happened in our lives are a result of decisions of other people, parents, grandparents, life, whatever it is, right? Things have happened to us. And sometimes life seems unfair. How many of you feel that way? Where it seems unfair and you're like, this is not how I planned my life to be. So how do we get through this? What do we do? And my message this morning is if you never. And I want to take you to an incredible story in the Bible. If you've never heard of Joseph and the son of Jacob and the coat of many colors, a lot of us have either seen the movie. I think there's a movie on it right now. We heard this story in Sunday school, or someone has told us a story about Joseph, right? And he goes and he tells his father and his brothers these dreams that he's had, that they're going to worship him and bow down to him and all this stuff. And it makes his brothers jealous. And it makes his father also question him. And recently, in the last few weeks at our church in Phoenix, we've been talking about relationships and what do you do with difficult people? Well, this is the epitome. This is the standard at this point in the Bible of a toxic family. Think about this. His brothers get so jealous of him that they want to kill him, right? And then they said, we're not going to kill you. We're instead going to sell you to slaves, and you're going to be a slave. And then he goes through so many other things in life. And Joseph, through his entire life, faces so many things that could have changed the outcome of the lives of many. And as we sit here this morning, I wonder if we sometimes think, what would have happened? What would have happened if this would have happened? Or if I would have decided this way? Or I would have moved or taken that job? Or if I wouldn't have married that person? Or if I would have married someone else? Or just look straight if you're sitting next to your husband or wife. Right? Just look straight. It works in Phoenix. Just look straight. Right? But if you never, so you guys know the story of Joseph, right? And Joseph goes on and he's sold as a slave. And see, if Joseph's brothers never sold him as a slave, then Joseph never would have meant to Egypt. If Joseph never goes to Egypt, then he would have never been sold to Potiphar. If Joseph was never sold to Potiphar, Potiphar's wife would have never falsely accused him of rape. If Potiphar's wife never accuses him of rape, then Joseph never goes to prison. If Joseph never goes to prison, he never meets the baker and the butler of Pharaoh. If he never meets the baker and the butler of Pharaoh, he can never interpret their dreams. If he never interprets their dreams, then he would never have interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. You see, even through the pits of hell that he was in, God saw him through. If you never would have gone through what you went through in your life, whatever it is, it would not bring you to the place that you're at this morning, today, 2021. And a lot of us, because we're human, a lot of us as humans, we question, and it's okay to do that. We question, why me? I've sat there myself and I've wondered, why me? The other day I woke up, my wife and I, we woke up, I don't remember the day, and we sat there and we're like, why us? Why am I in this house that we live in that I don't deserve? Why are we leading this great church in Phoenix that I don't deserve? Why am I here in just this great time in my life that I don't deserve? And I went back and I looked and I said to myself, if we never would have went through what we went through, we would never be here. We'd never be here. And some of us are getting ready to come full circle with that problem. Full circle to look into the face of that issue and say, if I never would have been through that, right? It's difficult. It's easy for us to say that I've been through it, but when you're going through it, it's very difficult to even worship God. That's why I started with thank you, because as we go through the shadow of the valley of death, as we go through all that long suffering, like Galatians says, if we go through all that, what is our reaction? How are we living our life? And see, Joseph, if he can't interpret Pharaoh's dream, then he never becomes prime minister. If he never becomes prime minister, then guess what? He can never save his brothers and his family through the famine. And through all that he went through all that he saw, through all that he went through, and through all that he felt, I mean, think about it for a second. We think that we're part of toxic families. Right? There's always a crazy person in each family. And it might be you. When we started preaching this at church at the beginning of the month, I told the people, I said, at the end of this, you're either going to be really upset with me or you're going to identify who that toxic person in your family is. Because some of us, the Word of God is a mirror, and it might be you. Right? It might be you. But at this point, Joseph goes through all this, and I want to take us through, I want to back up a little bit, because we know how his story ends, right? We know how his story ends, and a lot of us that have learned this story, we think that it ends when he saves his brothers from famine, and they come and they eat, and he saves them, and then he knows who they are, they don't know who he is, and it's like, hey, I'm your brother, remember the one that we sold, the one you sold, the one you wanted to kill, that one. And we think that the story ends there, but I have news for you. The story does not end there. And I take you to Genesis 50, and this is probably one of the most iconic to me chapters in the Bible, because this chapter in the Bible, two iconic men die in this chapter. Jacob, and then later on Joseph. And I want to start here with Jacob, I'm sorry. So it starts very easy, it starts very quickly. Genesis 50, verse 1. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. So here Jacob is dead. And imagine, put yourself in Joseph's shoes. Joseph at this point had missed so many things in his father's life. He had missed a lot of time with his dad. Sure, he got it back later, but he missed a lot of time. And now Jacob's gone. And see, when there is death in a family, especially an authoritative figure, it changes everything. When mom and dad die, when grandma and grandpa die, when someone like that passes away, it changes everything about family from that point moving forward. People change. People change. Attitudes, all that happened, it changes. And at this point, Joseph is sitting, and the Bible so clearly explains what he's doing. Think about this. Some of us have been there. When someone you know and love passes away, you're sitting there, and Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him, and he kissed him. Imagine. It all comes to an end now. It all comes to an end, and everything changes in the family from this point forward. Next verse, part 2. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, so the physicians embalmed Israel. So in other words, now it's time to bury him. And this is, the scholars, a lot of people say, I read this, I was looking for George Medina, but he's not here. But they say that Jacob's funeral was one of the most detailed funerals in the entire Bible. They went through so much detail, and verses 3 through maybe 7 or 8 go into the detail of what happened with Jacob. It meant that he was a very honored man. It meant that he was well respected. They mourned him for 70 days. And to put it in perspective, royalty was mourned for 72 days. So for 70 days, they mourn him. And for 70 days, they cry. And the entire family, I imagine, are sitting there mourning dad. And what happens next in verse 4 is then Joseph, with the authority that he has, he goes to Pharaoh and says, I want to bury Jacob here. He made me swear, he made me promise that I'm going to bury him somewhere else. And without hesitation, without any type of question, the house of Pharaoh says, whatever you want. I'm paraphrasing, but it says, whatever you want. And you see, Joseph had the integrity, Joseph had the character to walk into the house of Pharaoh, give his demands of how he wanted his dad to be buried. And without question, they said yes. Why? And here's my first point. Why? Because through everything that they saw Joseph go through, from being in prison, from being accused of rape, from interpreting dreams and telling him, hey, he told the butler and the baker, hey, I interpreted your dream, don't forget about me. And they said, yeah. And you know what they did? They forgot him for 2 years. And he still stayed faithful. And he still still had his character. He still served God. And that's why he had the ability to go into that house and say, this is what I want. And they said yes. And the reason for that is because of his character through his trials. And the first question I have for you is, what is our character through our trials? Who do we become when it all goes wrong? Who do we become when things don't go our way? Who do we become, watch this, when we mess up? Who do we become? And Joseph is a great example of true Christian character, of how to be, who to become during this time. And a lot of us, look, we're human. Right? Joseph wasn't this Superman. Joseph wasn't this man with superpowers. He was human. I said this last week, and Ryan and Mimi, you're hearing the same thing. I'm sorry. They were at Phoenix last week. But I am going to fail you. I'm going to fail you. I'm going to fail my wife. I'm going to fail my kids. I'm going to fail you as a brother or as a sister. I'm going to do something you don't like. I'm going to say something you don't like. Even our pastor is going to fail us sometimes. Why? Because he's human. And it just happens. And we fail each other. But through all of this, through all that Joseph had been through, think about it. Sold by his brothers. Sold by his brothers to die. Then put in prison and put him to a position of power and then accused of rape. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I would have made it past the prison. If Tim or Miss or somebody tries to sell me and they do, I don't think I would have made it past that actually. Never mind. Right? We're human. We're human. We fail each other. Things happen. Sam, you're going to fail me sometimes. I know you I think you did at Thanksgiving. But we're human. It happens. There's no perfect people. And what happens through all this time, that Joseph goes through this, and imagine us now. Put yourself in this position, everything you've been through, that relationship that you thought destroyed you, that heartbreak, that abuse, what happened to you when you were little, what happened to you as you grew up, the father and mother you didn't have, the person you thought you were gonna marry but was really somebody else. The kids that now growing up and they're not serving God, they're not living the way that we taught them, and what happens now? They failed us, and we've done everything we could, right? I know growing up I failed my parents many, many times. And that's why through everything that we go through, Joseph is a great example of how to react when bad things happen. How to react when bad things happen. And I've said this so many times. But the key to life, because I'm gonna fail you, right? We know that. The key to life, brothers and sisters, in this case here, is to always stay faithful to God. I think I'm gonna say it again. To always stay faithful to God. And I'll show you why in a little bit, but just to get your heart ready and just to get you there, it's okay to have an angry thought. Check this out. It's okay to even walk into this place and question, is God real? The fact that he is or isn't really isn't, we know he is, but there are times when we can be so confused and so hurt and feel so much pain when we walk in and say, is it really, Lindsay, worthy of it all, as you just sang? Is it really worth it? And there have been times in my life where I've even questioned, is all of this worth it? And Joseph, as he goes through life now, is sitting there with his father. And a piece of his life is over now. A piece of his life is gone, and he's sitting there with his father. And so they go and they bury Jacob, and they take care of him, and they handle all that situation. But you see, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, everything's changing now. Everything's changing. Mom, dad's gone. My father recently buried his mom, my grandmother. And my dad tells me something all the time. He says, when a grandparent, for you, for me, he's talking to me, when a grandparent passes away, your mom and I, we take one more step to death. It's just natural life. So now my grandparents are gone. My mom and dad take one more step. Guess what that means for me? One more step. Everything changes. And so, okay, so now we get into the good part, right? Jacob's gone, and we get to the good part, and this is where the Netflix novela starts, right? You guys know what I'm talking about with all the quarantine we've been doing. This is where it starts. And this is why who we are during turmoil will determine how big God's gonna be in your life. You see, because it's worth it. I heard someone say, is it worth it? Absolutely. And I'm here to tell you this morning that if you haven't been there or you need a reset, it's not too late. It's not too late to say, you know what, I'm gonna get myself back together, and I'm going through hell, I'm going through pain, I'm going through heartache, I still have this situation, but I'm gonna stay faithful to God. Regardless of what comes my way, I'm gonna stay faithful to God, and I'm gonna show you why it is so worth it. So we get to this point now where now everything is changing. And now it's like, all right, time to pay the piper. It's time to, what happens? His brothers start to get nervous. His brothers start to get nervous. And I've always asked myself, why? If they were living with Joseph, fine. If he saved them already, why would they get nervous? And the Bible says in verse 15 that once dad dies, what did I say? Everything changes. Everything changes. And now his brothers, in verse 15, they said, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. And see, there's gonna come a day when that evil that was done to you is gonna come around. That person that hurt you, that relationship, that heartbreak, that thing, whatever it is, it's gonna come back around. And here's a good example of finally, if for those of you that are waiting for an I'm sorry, or for will you forgive me, or let's make things better, finally after dad is gone, they come around and admit it, Brother Alex, we did evil to him. And one day, for those of us that are sitting in this pain, sitting in this heartbreak, ready, waiting, it's gonna come around. But only Joseph's character, through all the turmoil, gave him the authority to really snap his fingers, and he could have had his brothers killed. If he would have just given up, if he would have just said, I can't do this anymore, I'm gone, I'm out of here, this situation doesn't happen. This coming around, this culmination of events doesn't happen. And now his brothers are scared. And it made me wonder. Joseph is a great man, great character, forgiving, all that stuff. But did the human side of him sometimes come out and say, hey, when dad's gone, wait till dad's gone and you're next? Like, seriously, it's not in the Bible, but it made you wonder, right? I mean, if you saved the people that sold you and tried to kill you, and then you had all the power and authority over them, how would you react? The ultimate payback for the hurt, it's in your hands, and how do you react? And they're sitting here now, and they say, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. It made me wonder, through all this time that Jacob was alive, did they ever admit to him, I'm sorry? Did they ever tell him again, we're really sorry that this happened. We know we did evil. And some of us are waiting for somebody to say sorry. Some of us are waiting for people to explain what they did, why they did, how they could have done it. All those things that as humans we want. I need it. When somebody hurts me, I need the I'm sorry, right? Who else needs it? When someone does something to you, you want to be acknowledged and say, hey, I hurt your feelings. I did this to you. I did that to you. I'm sorry. And we never get that. And okay, that's fine. We don't get it. But how do I act during that turmoil? How do I act? And now we get to this point now where Joseph, his brothers are scared, and they send this messenger. Verse 16. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father gave this command before he died. Nobody knows if that's true. It's not recorded in the Bible if that was true. It could have been made up. They could have said, hey, let's tell Joseph because he loved dad so much that he swore that he wouldn't kill us if dad died. Right? I mean, that's something Tim and Miss would probably do. Right? And Sam and Celeste and Sonia. Verse 17. So say to Joseph, so here's what the plan. They say, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. Again. They admitted it. They did evil to you. They did. And I can imagine Joseph sitting there. Look what happens. Look what Joseph's doing. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. He's not sitting there acting like a joke. Oh yeah, they don't want me to kill him. Well, look what's next. Joseph wept as they spoke to him. What does that tell me? That tells me that the pain was still there. The times in the pit was still there. The times in prison being falsely accused was still there. The times of interpreting dreams and getting left behind was still there. The time from running from Potiphar's wife was still there. The times of not seeing his brothers was still there, that pain. The time of missing time apart from his dad was still there. And it doesn't matter what position God brings you to. It doesn't matter what position you get to. That pain will never get there. That pain will never leave, I'm sorry. It won't. And so now we get there. We get to this point where his brothers are telling him, don't kill us. And Joseph is crying as they say this. Crying. And it leaves me to think, okay, is it because they're still doubting who he is? Right? Are they still doubting who I am? Do they think I'm this mean person? I could have killed him years ago. Are they still doubting my character? And that may happen. When you give your life to God, when you become a Christian, when you change, people will still doubt you. People will still believe you to be that evil person that you were. And it's going to take time. It took time after everything Joseph had been through with them. It still took time. So he gets to this point where Joseph's crying. He's weeping. Next one. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. Joe, you can come up. Humble servants. Like, it's over. Like, please, we'll do anything. And Joseph, at this point, I can imagine what's going through your head. And see, my message to you this morning is this. What will you do when it comes back around to you? How will you react? Because it will come back. It will come back. That person that hurt you, it will come back. You're going to be faced with that situation again, with that problem, with that trial. And the question is, how will you react? What will you do? Will your Christian character show, or will you be who they say you are? And Joseph at this point is crying and he's weeping. And he's probably thinking so many things in his head, right? And here it is. I'm going to give you what I think should be our response to everything that happens. You see, because I've sat there before. And I know some of you have been in terrible situations. Some of you should have died. Some of you have lost people that in the last 2 years to everything that's going on. Some of you should have been divorced. Some of you are divorced. Something happened. And you didn't ask for it, you didn't want it, but it just happened. Some of you are living with so much pain and so much anger that you don't know what you're gonna do tomorrow morning. Some of you are living minute to minute. And you've asked God, why? When is it gonna be my turn? And Joseph, what he says next is the key to who we should be in Jesus. Is the key and is the key to what you should do and what we should say to every situation that comes our way, Brother Alex. Joseph's sitting there weeping with his brothers. Think about it. He could snap his fingers, Mom, and they can come and kill all of them right then and there. And God one day will give you that opportunity, not in that sense, but you're going to have that power to forgive. You're going to have that power to say, it's okay, it's going to be okay, let's move on, whatever it is, it's going to be okay. And what Joseph says next should be our prayer from this moment forward. Next. Here it is. I love this, and I hope that you feel my heart. I hope that you take this home, and I hope that you really, really say, this is gonna be me going into 2022. This is a fresh start for me. I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna be who you want me to be. I'm gonna try to mimic Joseph, you see, because nobody has been able to do that. And I don't think what happens next and what says next, what he says next, I don't think everybody in the Bible could have said this. I don't think I could have said this. I don't think any of us in this room could have said what he's gonna say next. You see, but it's not too late for some of us to get back on and say, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna get back in line. I'm gonna stay faithful to God. And what does he say next? And Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? In other words, I am not God to decide if you live or you die. He says, I'm not in the place of God. Leave that up to him. And he's telling his brothers, I'm not gonna kill you. You're gonna be okay. I'm not gonna kill you. I am not God. Even then, Joseph, boom, faithful to God. Character, through it all, faithful to God. But he's not done, he's not done, he's not done. He's not done, he's not done. So he almost like is going, okay, point A, I'm not gonna kill you, you're good. His brothers take a sigh of relief. Next. As for you, he tells them. And some of us are going to turn to that situation, turn to that relationship, turn to that heartbreak, turn to that person that tried to destroy you. That situation that was going to destroy you. That situation that was going to take you down and keep you away from God. That situation that, whatever it is, that depression, that anxiety, that relationship, even yourself. See, you can say this to yourself. And this should be the prayer of every single Christian, every single person that knows God and loves God. And look at what Joseph says to them. And I want you to say this. And I've had to say this sometimes to myself and the situations that come into my life. And he says to them, but God, he says, you meant evil against me. You meant evil against me, and I can see his mind racing. The accusations, the prison time, the selling, the loneliness, the times alone, the desperation, the anxiety, the depression that he went through. And he sits there, he says, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. And you are gonna have that situation, you are gonna have that opportunity, if you wanted, to look at that situation and say, you meant it for evil, but God turned it for good. You thought that anxiety was gonna get me, but God turned it for good. You thought that depression was gonna get me, but God turned it for good. How many of you want to turn to that situation and say, you meant it for evil, but God's gonna turn it for good? How many of you need something to turn for good? And I feel for those that are going through loneliness, through heartache in relationships, through all that time that you don't share with everybody. And that opportunity to say that you meant it for evil. No, God's gonna turn it for good. And that's what we can learn out of all this situation. If you never went through what you went through, how can God turn it for good? If our life is geared towards being disciples and to showing the love of Christ, if you never go through what you go through, Brother Alex, how can you turn that evil into good? If you never went into that situation, if the devil tried to come and attack your marriage and attack your life, and you made it and you're here, you could turn around and say, man, you meant for evil, but God's gonna turn it for good. You see, there is a purpose to it. There's a purpose to it that's even bigger than us. And I'm gonna end with this. Joseph dies at the end of chapter 50. He dies and he never made it to the promised land, and he wanted to get to the promised land. And what did they do? What did they do? They kept his bones above ground for 400 years. So what does that mean? That means that they took his bones to Egypt. When they were delivered by Moses through Egypt, they had Joseph's bones. When they went through the Red Sea, they had Joseph's bones. When they went through the Jordan River, they had Joseph's bones. When they went and beat Jericho, they had Joseph's bones. What does that mean? That when it comes around, and when you stay faithful to God, and when you turned all the evil that was meant against you for good, it will also affect the generations after you. Woo! It's not gonna be for you, for your girls, Brother Alex. Brother Bradford, it's not just gonna be for your kids. It's gonna be for their kids, your grandkids, and kids after that, so that when they see the bones of Joseph, they can say, what they meant for evil, God turned it for good. He turned it for good. And finally, his bones get to the promised land. And the people are saying, why, what does that mean? And every opportunity, it was like, God made a promise to him. And guess what? God made a promise to you. And it's for you and your wife, your husband, your kids, their kids, their kids, their kids. So when we sit here in 300 years or whenever, I just want to make it past 2021. When we sit here, what are they going to have? What are they going to say about your bones? What are your kids' going to say about your bones? You know what we want them to say? You know what we want them to say? He turned that evil against him for good. Woo! How many of you want to turn that evil for good? How many want to give God a praise and say, stand to your feet. How many want to give God a praise right now and say, what you meant for evil against me, God, I want to turn it to good. But seriously, how many want to turn it for good? I want you to lift your voice and worship the God of God and the King of Kings that will turn any evil against you for good. I'm serious. I don't want a polite praise. I want you to throw your hands and say, what you meant for evil, devil, what you meant to come to destroy me, you are going to turn it for good. I'm serious. Raise your hands right now. And if you need something, if you want to turn it for good, I want you to come to this altar right now and say, I will not let you destroy me. I will not let you destroy my family. I will not let you destroy my kids. Because that evil will not work, because God will turn it for good. How many want to turn it for good? How many are tired of living that way and say, I want to turn it for good? I before we sing, I'm gonna make one more call. Because you can leave today with the victory. I promise you, you can leave free of what's holding you back. You can leave free of what the devil has been wrapping your family with. You can leave free. And I'm gonna ask you to come up if you wanna be free. God's been getting your family for years. The devil, I'm sorry. The enemy's been wrapping your mind with so much doubt, with so much depression and confusion. He's been throwing so much at you, and we've been taking all that evil, and we don't know what to do with it. We're not sure what to do with it. We're just taking it day by day, punch by punch. And we're wondering, Eva, you're wondering, when will it be me? When will I have the victory? Tonight, or this morning, I'm sorry, is your opportunity. But like Joseph, who had faith through the turmoil, you need to come up to this altar. If you want that change, come up to this altar. They're gonna sing, and we're gonna pray, and we're gonna believe that God is gonna turn that evil for good. Those of you that are you ready for it? Are you tired of all this evil against you? Are you tired of the evil against your family? This morning you can go home different, and you can have a great Christmas because God's gonna turn it for good. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's lift our hands.